Hello and welcome to the Beyond the Shallows podcast. I am your host, Jason. So glad that you're here with me this week. This week we are going to be talking about the widow, the poor widow and her mites. As always, this episode is brought to you by youthworshiptraining.com. You know a student who needs to be involved in worship ministry, needs to be equipped, needs to be more confident in themselves. That's one of the things that we can teach them how to do. Maybe you are a youth leader or you know a youth leader who doesn't feel like he has a lot of budget, doesn't feel like he has a lot of time, doesn't have any musical talent, but definitely needs some help in the worship ministry of their youth group. Please direct them to youthworshiptraining.com. I will equip and train their students to be able to schedule songs, to play them well, schedule the people, run a little devotional beforehand, know what to say in between the songs, all that kind of stuff, all right? So check out youthworshiptraining.com. It is by scholarship, and so your students can get in for free. You, as the youth leader, will not have to pay a dime, and I'll contact your church and see if there's anybody who wants to sponsor your students in ministry. So check it out, youthworshiptraining.com. Let's get into the episode. In Luke chapter 21, we have 4 verses that teach a powerful lesson. This is the story of the poor widow and her mites. It says, chapter 21, verses 1 through 4, it says, "And he looked up and saw the rich putting in their gifts into the treasury. He saw a poor widow putting in 2 small copper coins. And he said, 'Truly, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all of them. For they, out of all of their surplus, put into the offering. But she, out of her poverty, put in all that she had to live on.'" Let's talk about it. All right, so Jesus, this is like right at the end of Jesus's ministry. He is in Jerusalem right now. He's at the temple, and I actually have 2 mites here, and I'll get them up close to the camera here. Maybe you can see them. So I block my face there. Yeah, 2 of these. They're tiny, right? I just dropped one, and I'm afraid that if I went to go vacuum, that I would just suck them right up in the vacuum cleaner. That's what widow's mites look like. The mites. These are basically like pennies. They look like just melted down drips of old coin or something like that. But they're copper, and they didn't even bother stamping them or making them into a form. They just little drops of molten copper, and they could use that as the smallest denomination. And so what was happening in the temple? Why was this such a big deal? Well, let's give you some context. In the temple, there were these big chests, right? And inside the chests were these shekels, right? These shekels of Tyre, which are, decent sized coins. And what would happen was the important people, the rich people, they would come and they would bring their tithes and bring their offerings. And these chests, they were kind of resonant, right? And so they would drop these coins in, and it would cha-ching, 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 ka-ka, ka-ka, right? And so if somebody's standing over there dropping in coin after coin, you hear every coin hit, right? And it's making sound like block walls in the temple, right? And everything is stone and flat, and so it's like echoing, and so like people would be very impressed with somebody who was coming in and dropping in a lot of coins into these treasury chests, right? And so it was kind of a way, it was a power move. It was a way to kind of bolster yourself up a little bit, And so this little widow comes behind somebody who's tried to get all this attention by dropping in these big coins. And she takes these 2 little mites and she drops them in, right? You saw the size of those things. Do they make much sound? No, just a little tink, tink, right? And Jesus says this is the better offering. Now, what do we learn by this? A lot of the times we talk about everything that I have belongs to God, right? All of my money and everything is God's, right? It's one thing to say that when you can give out of the surplus, right? It's one thing to say that when it's easy to drop the shekel of Tyre in, right? The big coins in where they can make a clink. It's a lot harder to say everything that I have belongs to God when this is what you're dropping in. That this is how much food could I get for these 2 little pennies? It becomes real all of a sudden. And Jesus says this is the better gift, the offering that is truly everything, the offering that is truly abandoning any sense of security or and growing in dependency on Him. We see, this same type of heart displayed throughout the rest of the New Testament as well. Romans 12:1 and 2 talks about offering our bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, which is a spiritual act of worship, right? And a lot of times we forget when we're talking about these mites and we're talking about our offerings and our tithes or anything like that, that it is worship, right? And I think that that's the point, is that this widow, the Pharisee or whoever was, dumping in all the money into the treasury and getting all the attention, like, where was his focus, right? His focus was he's already gotten his reward, right? He got the attention that he wanted. The widow came and just offered what she had, which wasn't much, but was everything, as an act of worship. I've heard people talk about, giving online and how much that has affected their sense of being able to worship in their giving. Just because without passing the plate and seeing the money go into the plate or putting the check into the offering box, if it's just tapping a couple buttons, it doesn't have that same sense of like, I am releasing what the Lord has told me to give to Him, right? I've even heard of people who don't do the automatic withdrawals out of their bank account for their giving, but instead they sit down for this reason, to make sure that when they give to their church or for the kingdom, they're doing it with a heart that is intentionally worshipful. Now, you don't have to do that. I like the automatic withdrawal. That was good for me because I would go a long time and forget, right, if I didn't have that. But then every time I would review my bank statements and see it, I would make sure in my heart, I was just going, okay, Lord, yeah, that's yours. It's all yours, like, do with it what you will, advance your kingdom, build the church, right? So check your heart when it comes to giving. What are you holding back? The Lord honors a cheerful giver. He loves it. It's the only thing that He calls us to test Him in, is to give out of generosity and a joyful heart that just wants to see Him honored and glorified and loved on and praised through that act of obedience, right? And at some point it shifts, right? At one point it feels like, I got to live off of this. I got to feed my family off of it. I'm going to sacrifice out of this, right? But at a certain point it's like, man, it's a joy to give and see what He's going to do with it. If you don't know what to give, 10% is a good place to start. Another thing to do if you're married is just sit down with your spouse and say, hey, I think we should be giving. I'm going to pray and then write down on a piece of paper what I think we should give. You do the same thing. See how close you guys are. See how close you are. That's a really good way to see if the Spirit is really prompting you with a particular number in your family, in your life. It can be a really powerful thing in your marriage too. The other thing, it's very easy for us to attend church, to get involved, to even volunteer at church and be there a lot, but also not have a sense that we have sacrificed anything of ourselves for our church. Like, you can still work in the kids ministry and enjoy your time and even work hard, but not feel like it's a sacrifice, right? David, when offered a piece of property that he wanted to buy so that he could worship the Lord in a particular place and in a particular way, King David refused. He refused to just accept the gift of the property. And his response was, I will not offer to the Lord something that did not cost me anything. How adamant are you that your worship costs you something? That's what Romans 12:1 and 2 says. We offer our bodies as a spiritual sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, as a spiritual act of worship, right? To offer your body and climb up onto an altar, like that should cost you something, right? These little mites may not be much. You may not have much, but what you do have, it belongs to Him. Are you willing to offer it to Him? Are you willing to sacrifice for Him? And if it doesn't hurt to give, if you're living in the bounty and the plenty, then maybe it's time to up that number. Just something to think about. All right. Beyond the Shallows, Life is Better in the Deep End. This is my book. If you want to support me and my family, a great way to do that is to buy the book on Amazon, listen to it on Audible. I'm also involved with Infusion Ministries. You can support me at infusionnow.org. Certainly support your local church as well. And check out youthworshiptraining.com. Thanks for hanging out with me this week. I will see you again soon.